Killer Mike, Michael album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about this latest album from Atlanta-based legend Killer Mike. You may know him from his solo stuff, his features somewhere, or most importantly, at least as far as I'm concerned, one half of the legendary Unstoppable duo known as Run the Jewels. I mean, I've been familiar with Mike's music since my early teens when he was coming up in the scene. That was very, very, very much so at the peak of my Outkast obsession, and hearing his multiple collaborations and features around this time actually made me kind of fall in love with his big personality and his hyper aggressive style. I loved that shit. And then, you know, he started putting out albums on his own around this time, and I was kind of conflicted. His debut, Monster, and I Pledge Allegiance to the Grind, Part 1. These albums, to me, I mean, even in retrospect, don't really play to as many of his strengths as some of his later solo work would. Mike was never really the problem here. As a matter of fact, a lot of his performances were often bombastic, in your face, overly aggressive, just the way that I like to hear Mike's music. It was kind of along the lines of, I don't know, I wasn't that enamored with the beats he was finding himself on. The production wasn't always as, you know, perfect as it could be. I had my issues, but I did start turning around on him around the time of I Pledge Allegiance to the Grind Part 2. Now, this was not a perfect album, but at the very least, I thought the beats were fresher. I thought Mike sounded a lot more comfortable. This was just a really solid Southern rap album, and I thought it was pretty good. And then, oh, yeah, by the way, he put out rap music. I mean, Mike sounded like a completely different person. He just, you know, kind of shed this former shell of his that he'd been working under for years and just seemed like, I don't know, an entirely new person on this album. This album was completely produced by LP. The beats were absolutely booming. Every single feature on this thing was pretty much handpicked to be perfect, and Mike sounded on top of the world. It's an amazing album that I still think has aged wonderfully. I mean, this thing in its entirety is practically the precursor to Run the Jewels. It's not that shocking that they love working together so much these days. Now, it has been a hot minute since Mike has dropped a solo work, and I've been eagerly anticipating this album quite a bit. So let's chat about this thing. This album starts off with Down by Law featuring CeeLo, and you know what? This is exactly the kind of intro I wanted to hear. This is a bluesy southern banger with a hell of a classy beat. It just has this triumphant feel to it. I mean, I've been hyped for this album for quite some time, and hearing this intro track only got me more hyped. And Mike's performance on top of that is just as triumphant. I mean, this album as a whole is very autobiographical for Mike. We get very deep personal backstories for him, and most of them are pretty compelling. It's very current sounding, it's hyped, it's aggressive, and you know, CeeLo is a guy these days that I'm not always hyped to hear a feature from, but the guy's a Southern legend for a reason, and here, I mean, his feature sounds like he's right at home. This is a great intro. Shed Tears featuring Mozzie, on the other hand, it's a little bit more laid back, it's not as aggressive and in your face. I mean, this soulful piano-driven beat, that's home for me. This is something I would have really loved in my teens, and just Mike is such a guy that has always done exactly what he wants in hip-hop, and hearing him on this beat, it's money. On top of that, as far as, you know, lyrics go, Mike is laser focused, but you know, he's very rarely not. And Mozzie, who is an MC that I am not really, I don't know, familiar with, his feature here is actually really memorable. It is nasty in the best way. Then we have Run featuring Young Thug. You're getting a whole lot more biographical bars. The spoken word intro is also really tasteful. And once again, triumphant is the name of the game. This horn blasting beat, it amps me the hell up, and I actually think Mike's sort of laid back approach to this track, it's a nice switch up. This track is perfect to chill out and hang out outside too. It's gravy, baby. And Young Thug, who, I mean, I don't get much of a chance to talk about here on this channel, but honestly, I've never been that big of a fan of Thugger outside of Jeffrey. Jeffrey's pretty great, but once again, his feature here is fantastic. As a matter of fact, that is a running theme of this album. Mike has taken a short list of MCs that I'm usually very iffy on and actually gets a lot of great work out of them. Then we have NRICH featuring Black and Aaron Allen Kane. This track is much more of a hectic call to action, but man, is it just as classy and well produced. I mean, the beat here, once again, just about every beat on this album just hits me right here. The song hook that we get here from Aaron Allen Kane, it is absolutely gorgeous. And Black's performance, who, once again, another artist who I have not been that kind to on this channel. I don't know what's going on here, but his performance here is incredibly soulful. He has a lot of genuine chemistry. And I should note, like, while often hyped and, you know, energetic, this is not nearly as in your face as some of Mike's other stuff. But as far as a more personal album from him, I am just very, very happy. Speaking of bangers, we get Talking That Shit, and it is a hell of a banger. And one of the only tracks here that does not have a feature. This is the Killer Mike show. I just love hearing him on this very bulky, intense beat. It is just so in your face and hardcore, and he just sounds just as focused as ever. It's awesome. And the beat switch that we get here, it's nothing short of a work of art. And then we have Slummer featuring Jagged Edge. We're breaking out Jagged Edge. I mean, not only am I shocked that Killer Mike would, you know, just have them arrive on this album. Not that there's anything wrong with some Jagged Edge. There's certainly not. But honest to God, this may be my favorite deep cut here. This track hits hard. The chopped up soul sample, the nods to Southern hip hop, Mike's flow, which is just absolutely hypnotic. It's all money, and the sheer class of this album, and Mike's continued tales of his upbringing. It's just a winning combination. And yeah, the Jagged Edge feature, it actually gave me the chills. It's pretty awesome. I mean, this album may not be as, I don't know, as timely or explosive as rap music, but man, this album's great. I do have my issues, though. Honestly, Scientists and Engineers featuring Andre 3000, Future, and Aaron Allen Kane, once again, this track actually has lessened on me quite a bit, sadly. It was one of the first singles that was put out on this album, and at first I thought it was pretty fresh. But hearing this with the rest of the album, I can't help but feel like it really sticks out. I mean, this is a pretty wonky, weird, left field experimental track, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to fit here. I mean, it's not all awful. Andre 3000 actually sounds pretty good. The soul sample's cool, and Future, I mean, you know my thoughts on him. The guy can jump on just about any hook and make it a banger. This track is no different. But as a full track, I just feel like this is very out of place. But that's just me. I understand the hype. And Spaceship Views, albeit probably the track that I was the most excited for, is actually my least favorite track here. This track features Currency, as well as 2 Chainz, Cash Page as well. I mean, I've always thought Currency is really underrated, and 2 Chainz, say what you will, when he is on, he is on. But then I hear this unbearably average beat from Honorable C-Note, and it takes this southern rap posse cut and just turns it sour. I mean, this hook is god-awful. I mean, Mike's verse is fine, but this track is just so cluttered, and there's not a coherent thought in sight, and I'm just not vibing on that. Yeah, I was pretty shocked to hear both of those tracks. But outside of that, while not perfect, I do think this is probably one of the more solid rap albums you're going to hear all year. 2 Days featuring Ty Dolla $ign. This is my favorite deep cut here. I love this beat. Everything about this track sounds like a goddamn victory lap. Mike sounds so fantastic. Some of his one-liners on this track are some of the most memorable on this entire album. And Ty Dolla $ign, once again, I have not said many nice things about him, but Killer Mike has brought out the best in him, because Ty on this hook sounds absolutely money. Exit 9 featuring Blast is a real, just nostalgia trip of a tune. It is so good. The soulful hook that we get from Blast is fantastic, and Mike on these verses sounds genuinely choked up. It may be one of the more straightforward tracks here, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot to love. I mean, this really feels like an album for Killer Mike, and I really appreciate that. Something for Junkies featuring Fabo. Whew, this one cut deep. This is a dreary, downtrodden, emotionally raw track. And nothing but respect. Mike's bars, once again, very, very personal. And Motherless featuring Aaron Allen Kane, which was, I believe, the first single from this album that dropped. I still think it's the best track here. It is just a knockout all around. It is soulful. It is passionate. It is hard-hitting. Unbearably personal at times, and Aaron's sung hook, the dusty beat, and Mike's performance are just all icing on the cake. It's easily one of the biggest gut punches you're going to hear this year in hip-hop. Then we have Don't Let the Devil featuring LP, and Thank You Good Sir, and I have got one word for this track. One word. Smooth. The beat is slick. Mike here sounds at his most charismatic, which is wild, and LP's performance on this track is exactly what you think it is. And this album's finale, High and Holy, featuring Ty Dolla $ign once again, is an incredibly classy, soulful, just bow on this album to wrap it all up. And you know what? Mike kills it. He sounds right at home here. And my hat is off. Ty Dolla $ign, never been a fan, but once again, the feature is legit. And we also get arguably the most emotional and most importantly, memorable chorus on this entire album. It feels like a proper closer to this album. It has that sense of finality. Amen. Yeah, this album's pretty goddamn good. I mean, yeah, it's got some blips on the radar that are, pretty shockingly left field, and just Mike's a lot better than that. That's just what I think. But still, the hype on this album was real. I had a feeling that Killer Mike was going to bring us an album for him, and that's what we get. And I think that's really, really special because the bars here are incredibly personable and autobiographical, tear-jerking often. The dusty beats, the production that gives it that southern flair, and the long list of features that Mike has brought in. Most of them people that I usually don't even care for, but Mike has brought them on and made them really actually knock it out of the park. There's a lot to be impressed with here. No, it's not perfect, but I think it's one of the better hip-hop albums you're going to hear this year. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. Until next time, have a great day, friends.